6 Minutes Season 5. The Season of Unknowingness. The final chapter of the 6 Minute sequel.
There are kids in this world who are different. Special.
One of them found us.
And became family.
But her time ran out. And now, that girl is missing.
In this episode, I'll be breaking down the latest episode, 6 Minutes Season 5, Piece by Piece. Hey Review Pop listeners, it's Landon Mueller. We're here today talking about the very first episode of 6 Minutes Season 5, and man, it just absolutely blew me away. I mean, it just all worked really well. But also it's great to be back for, Review Pop Season 2 of the podcast, and I just want to quickly thank you all so much for supporting me and getting me this far. I really wouldn't be here without you guys. But, a couple things I really enjoyed about this episode, just hearing that dynamic between Holiday and Brinley, is always great. And, there's so much excitement to this episode and so many questions left unanswered. But without further ado, let's get straight into this episode.
But her past was never far away.
Hello, Holiday. I'm an admirer of your work.
Man, yeah, I just had to, include that wonderful musical, piece and an intro and recap. I mean, it just completely blew me away. And I really loved it. I loved that switch of, we hear these wonderful callbacks to, Holiday's birthday, and I just think it's so great, to Angelica Graves. And I want to talk a little bit about Angelica Graves. I wonder if, she'll be involved in Season 5 in a sort of way, right? I don't know if you caught this, but on Rewind, I think Jess let it slip that Magnus will be back in Season 5. And I love Magnus, and so I'd totally just completely be stoked about that. I mean, Magnus is amazing.
And Anders, through and through.
I know your heart. So does your father. You're Holiday Anders. You're my daughter.
Her creator, however, never stopped trying to fix what he'd lost.
Gosh, that line that Monica says just gets me every time. And if you don't know, it's from Season 2, when, they're in Whittier Corp and, they see each other for the first time since Holiday has learned the truth about who she is, that she's a robot. Only she learned to accept that, and she learned who she was. And that's really, 6 Minutes in its core is about family. And, I just really felt that in that moment. But, Dr. Whittier talking about how himself, always tried to get to Holiday and, make her life worse in every time and place and control things that didn't go his way.
Okay, Gwen, or whatever she called herself, she must have wanted out of her life with Whittier, so I guess she hopped in a portal and out came baby Brinley. She saved me.
I think in a way Brinley's still, kind of dealing with the concept and the idea that she actually is this other person. But also that's something I didn't think about of Guinevere wanted to get out of her life, right? And she wanted to get away from Dr. Whittier. Did he try to control, his wife? I mean, there's so much to that. And, there's so many layers to Dr. Whittier, so we can never really know with Dr. Whittier, why did she want to get out of her life?
Why I ended up at Elixir Academy? None of this would be happening if it weren't for you. We'd all be better off if you never existed in the first place.
She's found out that she's Guinevere Fontaine, and she's found out a lot of things, and that has to be so difficult and challenging. So to go through that, I imagine, is super hard, but also that she's kind of going back to her old self of like blaming Halliday. And it's out of Halliday's control. Halliday didn't choose to find herself in this situation. And I think Brinley has to understand that, and she has to understand, okay, this isn't Halliday's fault. This kind of changes pretty quickly later on in the episode, but I still think it's important to notice and consider it like she's gone through a lot, but at the same time, she shouldn't be blaming Halliday for something she has no control over.
Or New Orleans, maybe?
Ooh, how about Europe? I was a teenager when the Berlin Wall fell. I always did want to visit there.
Germany.
Am I crazy? Haven't we already been there?
So much has changed in 2025, and we're going to be learning a lot about that. But at the same time, there are things that have, stayed the same. And I think it's interesting how this is working of like, in Cyrus the Lost Tapes, Cyrus kind of didn't have any memories, but he kind of knew, he felt like he'd worked in a diner before. And, we're seeing something here of like, he remembers, he may have gone to this place, and also the word holiday is in his memory bank, and he doesn't know why. I think it'll be interesting to see if it'll be like season 4 of like, they start remembering things and they realize these memories are completely wiped from their mind.
The water came through the portal with us?
Look at the reflections. It must flow across the time-space continuum.
So, if we follow the water, we'll be back in 2025?
Maybe.
I think it's interesting of this river because in season 4, Jude introduced this concept as being, time flows like a river. But I always thought it was a metaphor, right? Not necessarily a physical thing. Dave was saying something similar on Rewind of like, he didn't always have the concept that it was a physical river, but this spot came up in season 5. But either way, I think it's super cool.
We're 4 stories up. What are we gonna do? Tie our bed sheets together and climb out the window?
I mean, unless you can fly.
No.
Seeing the dynamics between these two characters, also keeping that. Dave kind of talked about that on Rewind of like not changing the personalities. But yeah, I think, can Cyrus still fly? That's a big question. And it'll definitely come up at some point. But in my opinion, I think it can, right? I think this carries through space and time. It'll be interesting to see if I'm right.
Mom and Dad said that they found us together near the river after that weird electrical thingy happened. I don't get it.
Maybe it messed with our brains somehow. It definitely scrambled Cybot's circuits.
Poor guy.
I think there's a lot of time travel components that are involved with that, right? But I think it'll be interesting to learn more about that, right? Obviously, they ended up in Juneau, but they were in a completely different part of the world, right? Neverland. It's very far away from Juneau. So I thought it was just really done very well, and it'll be interesting to learn about how, they ended up here. But yeah, I think it's really great. I also think it's interesting with Cybot this season, right? He knows something that nobody else does. He knows, about Halliday. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not he's able to tell Cyrus that. Or, if Cyrus reprograms him or something.
That's what happened? Why I'm nowhere? Because Holiday Anders doesn't exist anymore?
I think in this new timeline we created, you never did.
Man, what a great cliffhanger. It's just so great, and I can't imagine how hard it is for Holiday to, wrap her head around. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. Until next time, this is Landon saying peace, love, and time travel.